What's up everyone, it's Aaron from Rudy Visuals, and in today's video we're talking all about flashes and 5 benefits of using flash for your portrait photography if you're thinking about taking your portrait game to that next level. This video is made possible by the good people over at Godox who sent us this amazing AD200 Pro. So before we begin, we do want to say a huge thank you to Godox. This is not a paid or sponsored video in any way. We actually wanted to buy this for ourselves, but Godox were kind enough to actually send one to us. So thank you very much to you guys, Godox. So we've been using the AD200 Pro, which is a hybrid between a studio flash and a traditional speedlight. It has the compact size and portability of a speedlight, but with the power almost of a bigger studio flash. We will be doing more videos with this thing and possibly a full review, so do stay tuned for that. But if you are thinking about getting into flash photography, I'd highly recommend you check out Godox's lineup. There's lots of different models and brands out there. Yongnuo also makes some pretty good budget speedlights too. But based on our experiences, we'd highly recommend checking out the AD200 Pro if you're looking to invest in something a little bit more pro. Do keep in mind that you also will need a trigger of some kind to trigger your flash and some kind of light modifier too, like a softbox. So when we first started getting into portraiture kind of more seriously, we pretty much only used natural light. So the idea of using flash is probably one of the more intimidating things about learning portraiture. I do feel that one of the main reasons why beginners tend to shoot only in natural light is because there's already enough like jargon and things to learn in photography to begin with. When you start getting into flash photography as well, it's just everything times 10. However, over the past 18 months or so, we've been getting more and more into studio photography, so we've been forced to learn to use strobes and speedlights, and more recently using them more and more on outdoor shoots too. And while there's really no right or wrong answer in terms of natural light versus artificial light, you know, it's all personal preference. In our experience, we have found that there are lots of benefits to using flash compared to just natural light. So here are 5 of the big benefits to using a flash rather than just relying on natural light. So the first benefit of using a flash, of course, is being able to shoot at any time of the day. So for example, with natural light, you are limited in terms of flattering light, be it sunrise, sunset, or waiting for a cloudy day. You know, typically harsh lighting like a bright sunny day has always been a no-go for us due to the light being very unflattering. Using a flash, however, means you can introduce your own light source to overpower that sun and get rid of that harsh, unflattering light and even out those unwanted shadows as well. With a flash, you have the ability to overcome challenging lighting situations, and those typical situations that you wouldn't shoot in, you know, suddenly become very doable. Having your own reliable source of light means that no matter the time of day, you're still able to get great shots. Another great example is the ability to shoot at night, but still be able to get nice exposure and lighting for your subject and background. So reason number 2 is that it's more flattering for your models. So shooting in natural light, whether it's in ideal or unideal conditions, you still have some issues in terms of how flattering it can be for your subject. So obviously we just talked about harsh, bright light and creating those strong and prominent shadows, but it can also highlight impurities in the skin, it can highlight discolorations, or say if you're backlighting your subject, it can create that really washed out look, particularly in the eyes and the skin. By introducing your own light and using a flash, we're pretty much able to mitigate most of these issues. Nice soft lighting evens out the skin nicely in terms of, you know, the texture, and also adds a nice pop, color and contrast to the skin and eyes. Obviously in portraiture, you want to make your subject, your model, look as good as possible, so definitely a big plus for us. Okay, so reason number 3, probably the biggest one here, is more control. So when shooting natural light, you're obviously never in full control of the light. You're just trying your best to take advantage of the light that's available to you. But with a flash, you're pretty much in control. So where you place your light, the strength of your light, the direction, the amount of light to use, even the color. You know, a good example of this is if you look at some of these examples. So we shot these images backlit with the sun directly behind the model. So this does help avoid that harsh sunlight and squinting, you know, and you get a nice sort of backlit angelic look to your photo. You get that nice glow and rim light around the model. But while the model is in the shadow and the lighting is even on the face, we do get a lack of punch, contrast and color in their face and particularly in their eyes as well. This is better than having them face the sun in my opinion, but still not ideal. But by introducing a flash in this scenario, we can then expose the face how we want and get that nice contrasty and punchy look and get some catch light in the eyes too. It just makes for a more flattering and eye-catching result. That was all achieved by our ability to control the situation. You know, we decided how much light to use in terms of the power, the distance, and you can even move and angle your light directly in front or at a 45-degree angle to the side, even above to, you know, dramatically change the style of your portrait. Let's say if you're going for a more fashion editorial portrait or for a more moody and dramatic style. Regardless, you're in control. Which leads me nicely onto my fourth point, which is how a flash helps create separation. So using a flash, you know, it creates and highlights color and contrast. And not only is that flattering for your subject, as we spoke about, but it's also a great way to create a more three-dimensional feel to a portrait. It gives this illusion of depth, as you can see in our sample here, but our subject just doesn't really stand out very much. However, when you illuminate your subject with your flash, you can see how much this image changes. Our subject pops so much more and suddenly becomes the star of this image, while the background and everything else is just complementing her. Without the flash, the subject is more lost in the image and we lose that sense of depth. It's a nice picture still overall, but using the flash makes the model the star of the image. And my final reason is having more control of your exposure for your background and your subject. So often, you know, when you're shooting in natural light, you're basically having this constant battle of trying to balance the exposure of the subject, your model, and the background. So usually if you expose for your subject, the background is way too overexposed and your highlights are blown out. Or if you expose for your background, the subject is suddenly really dark and underexposed. So we tend to go with the latter. We shoot raw, so most of the time you can fix this in post, but it's not perfect. Using a flash, particularly with high speed sync, meaning you can shoot with high shutter speeds, it basically means you can ensure that your background is nicely exposed first. And whereas before this would mean your subject is underexposed, we can introduce our flash to correctly expose the subject as well. This means that you get a much more balanced exposure across the whole image. And not only does this mean a better image straight out of the camera, but it also makes for a much better starting point when you begin editing your photos. So those are my top 5 benefits to using a flash. Before we conclude, you know, there are cons as well, which I do think it is important to be aware of if you are thinking of getting into flash photography. Obviously, the first is that it's more equipment to carry. You're going to need a flash, a trigger, a light stand, a light modifier. It basically means it's a lot less run and gun and it can be quite cumbersome at times, particularly if you are shooting outside. Those of you who've ever experienced light stands in the wind, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It also does attract a lot more attention. So we shoot pretty much every week, anytime we have free time. And most of the time, if you're just shooting with cameras, nobody really bats an eyelid. But once you bring out the flash and a light stand and a big softbox, you know, you do get police coming over and asking you what you're doing. Yeah, it just does attract a lot more attention than usual. And finally, it does involve a lot more tinkering and practice. So there's a lot of trial and error to get your exposure set right. So be prepared to shoot, look, adjust, you know, there's lots of chimping basically. It can be a little bit clumsy at first when you're first kind of like getting to grips with everything, particularly when you are trying to get your exposure between your subject and your background just right. Which I think leads me nicely to my conclusion. So when it comes to the debate about natural versus artificial light, I really do believe that there's no real right or wrong answer, no better or worse. It's just an additional tool that you have at your disposal and something that can further improve or make unworkable situations more workable. However you feel though, I do feel that learning to use flash and artificial light, it does actually make you understand lighting better and make you a better and more rounded photographer overall. And that ability to salvage bad lighting situations, it's definitely a big one for me personally. We've absolutely loved using the AD200 Pro. It's so easy to use. It has enough power for most outdoor situations and even indoor situations. And that ability to use HSS, high speed sync, and use fast shutter speeds is so awesome. But even if you just get a cheap speed light, you know, we first started learning on I think it was a cheap Yongnuo speedlight. It's like $50. Use something like that to practice with. Even that's still a great starting point as well. Okay, well, let us know in the comments what you think. Do you use flash? Are you more of a natural light shooter versus artificial light? Let us know down below. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Any questions, again, leave them down there below. I'll try my best to answer them. And follow us on socials. And if you like this video, do me a huge favor, give it a like and comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's it. I guess I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye, guys.